Where and when were you born?
I was born on the 2nd of November 2001 here in my city that I live in Germany. It's near Hamburg.
So you're a Scorpio.
Yes.
And do you identify with being a Scorpio?
I think so. I don't know that much about it, but um, from what I read, yes, I do.
How so? Deep feelings, passionate.
I'd say passionate.
Okay. And what siblings do you have?
I have a bigger sister, she's 20, and I have a big brother, and he's 24.
Mm-hmm. A lot of times leaders are firstborn, so it's interesting that you're later born.
Mm, yeah, I'm the youngest, but I think my brother would be too, so I think that my siblings and I are all like pretty, um, I don't know how to say. I think
Um,
we can all take leadership quite well.
uh-huh. And were they interested in the environment first, or were you first interested in the environment?
They're not interested in the environment at all, actually.
Oh.
I don't know how come, but um, like not too much. I think they're interested in it, they care, but they're not really active in activism. So yeah. So my sister especially, she's trying to like pay attention to what she's buying and that she doesn't eat too much meat, but yeah.
And then, so why you? What got you involved to be an activist? Because I've heard your name. You're known in the field.
Oh, really? Okay. I didn't really know, but I think I just got into it like around like the end of 2018. I think it was just watching documentaries about the topic, and I actually heard Greta's speech after my first strike, I guess. So it wasn't really Greta's speech. So I think it just, there wasn't like a point where I would think that was the point that I got interested in activism. It was just, it just came over time.
And is school strike and Fridays for Future, has that been your main avenue for activism?
Yes.
Um, what do you do that? Do you not go to school on Fridays, or how do you carry out your activism?
Okay, that's kind of funny because I actually did not go to school on Fridays till summer because that was till summer I went to high school, but then I graduated, so now I'm like in university because I graduated early at 17. So now I only have university. I actually only go to university 4 days a week, and I have Fridays off, so I don't really strike anymore, which is kind of sad. But yeah, I still go to the demonstrations on Friday, but it's not really a strike for me anymore, which is quite funny that it's Friday.
But you in high school you skipped school on Fridays.
Yes.
And what was the school's response?
Mm, well, in Germany, we only strike for like 2 hours. It's not like the people in Sweden that sit there for 7 hours, I guess. So we just have 2 hours, and I really missed math. And my math teacher was really nice about it, and she cares about the environment as well. So she didn't really make a drama out of it, so it worked. So I just did the stuff that they did on my own at home. That was good.
Mm-hmm. And what are you studying in university? What topic are you focusing on?
I'm studying political science.
Mm-hmm. Not environmental science?
Mm, I'm not really interested in the science, so well, I think it's interesting, but I wouldn't want to study it full time.
Mm-hmm.
So I still read about it like every day, I guess, but I don't study it.
Got it. And will political science lead to being a lawyer or a politician, or how do you see it leading you?
Mm, I don't know if it actually will lead me to something like that. I could see myself doing NGO work, maybe. for environment or human rights or something, but I'm not a lawyer, and I wouldn't say I wouldn't become a politician, but definitely not yet, and not in the next 5 years or so.
Mm-hmm. Um, have you been able to travel like and see what NGOs do, or how much have you been outside of Germany?
I've just been to COP25, Madrid,
Ah,
so that was quite an experience.
oh yeah.
Um, it was a lot, but I was there for the whole 2 weeks, and yeah, I made lots of NGO contacts and learned stuff about Paris Agreement, especially. There was Article 6 and market mechanisms, so I learned quite a lot.
Well, that conference was so discouraging. Did
It
you?
was.
I mean, it was so sad. What kind of? I know there was a lot of marching and demonstrations and signs. What kind of pressure did the activists put on the participants, and why didn't it work?
Mm, I think we put pressure on them, but I think it just didn't work because I think everything has to be decided in consensus, if I'm right. So I think that just wasn't easy to do with some countries blocking. And it wasn't just like USA or Saudi Arabia that were blocking, it was also Germany that was blocking. Like actually in Germany, like in the EU, Germany is one of the countries that block.
Why?
I don't mm, I don't know, maybe because the lobby is really strong here and our politicians are quite conservative. They're on the government right now. Yeah.
But Germany is a leader in terms of alternative energies, of making it possible to have small scale solar panels everywhere and that kind of thing.
Yes, but we still rely on coal a
Coal.
lot. Like we have one of the biggest carbon sources in the EU, in Germany,
Hmm.
Rhineland.
Hmm.
So lots of coal power plants. And there's actually a new coal power plant that's gonna be built in 2020, actually, this year in Germany. It's called Datteln 4, but there'll be lots of actions and campaigning against it, so hopefully it doesn't happen, but it's planned.
I
From
wanted to ask you as a kind of a footnote about politicians. Um, uh, Angela Merkel has been so powerful. It's rare to have such a powerful, strong woman, and it's interesting to me that her nickname is Mutti, like mommy. Is that is that
I,
is that true? People call her Mutti.
I don't think they call her like that anymore, but I think that was a thing. And well, I think that very much of what she does is great. And I'm not against her. I think most of the time she knows what's right to do, but she also said stuff that's like since the environmental movement became really big in Germany, I'm not really that big of a fan of her anymore because she's been like saying that our movement became that strong because Russia's behind it or something. I don't remember it exactly, but it was
Wow.
quite weird. And what she does like for the climate is like actually nothing right now, and her cabinet isn't that good. So
Are the Greens the party that's most environmentally aware and active?
mm, actually, like on the national level, I think they're not, but I think they're the party that could realistically actually change something. But we have elections in one state this year. It's Hamburg, and the Greens actually demand net zero 2035 for Hamburg, which is quite good, but we don't know what happens. Um, but for FF Germany, we're not really supporting any political party.
Mm-hmm. Um, to go back to Madrid, what tactics did people use to try to make influence besides marching in the streets?
We did try to do some actions for FFF. We occupied the main stage on the plenary room, which was actually funny because we did the occupation. We planned it the day before. I actually planned it with 4 friends, and then we blocked the stage with 50 or 60 people. Then after that, the UNFCCC posted it on their Instagram and said it was a special event on climate change. And yeah, and before they actually said that they wanted to debadge us because we were there for too long. And I think just when it comes to like putting pressure on people, we had lots of just meetings with politicians. So we met with people from the German delegation, and we actually met with the German environmental minister. But there was nothing really coming out of that. And we talked to the Polish chief negotiator because everyone told us that Poland was the country that was blocking in the EU. So we also went to talk to him as well.
And what were their reaction, those ministers? It was like, go away, the kids, or what was their reaction?
I think it was just what you always hear. So it's just like we're doing our best and we're doing our jobs. And it's not easy. I said that they can't do it alone, that every country has to do it as well. So then Germany's also only responsible for 2% of the emissions, stuff like that.
Okay. Well, did you go away from there feeling energized because you took action, or did you feel discouraged because so little happened, or both?
I think the main feeling when I left was I was tired. No, okay. I think I did feel a bit discouraged because they had that huge agenda that they wanted to work on, and I think until they only made it through less than 10%. So there was nothing really happening, but I did feel like the energy from the people because we're there with 500,000 people, which was great, and it was so powerful. And also the people that I met, like everyone's giving their best for the environment every day. So I think that's really something that's encouraging.
What other groups were there besides Fridays for Future?
I think there was there were lots of environmental groups. There was Greenpeace and Climate Action Network, 350, like lots of NGOs, and yeah, lots of people from universities as well, and Plan for the Planet.
And what do you think there is about your generation that seems like it uniquely young when they start activism? I mean, you hear about people like Lily, the Brit who lives in the Netherlands, who started the plastics business when she was 11.
Yeah.
So that's unique as far as I know. Why do you think Generation Z is able to be so powerful?
I don't know. I mean, it was always said that we're an unpolitical generation. Like, I don't know if it was global or it was just in Germany. Germany always said that we're the lazy generation. And I think that we just don't accept things like they are. And I don't know where that comes from, but I think in general we grew up completely different than like the generations before us because we had lots of technology, and I think you also hear about the climate now so often, so I think that makes you get involved. But I think it's just mainly that we don't accept things like they are right now.
But why? Because other generations maybe did. It just say, I can't do anything. Why? What gives you all courage?
I don't know where that comes from, actually. I was wondering that too. Um, I don't know.
Um, I think maybe what I think of is social media because it makes people smart. I mean, people know about issues at a young age where they didn't before. They relied on school to teach them, and if the school didn't talk about the environment, it wasn't a big deal. But now you can just go on social media. And I also think maybe parenting changed, and parents became more protective and focused on their kids. Then, like a long time ago, they said kids should be seen and not heard, but it's not like that anymore.
Yeah. I also think one thing because that we're like really involved, I think it's because we have such a high standard of living. Like for example, I don't have to worry about what I'm gonna eat for dinner because I can just go into the kitchen and I have food. So I think that's different. That's been different for some generations, and we have the resources to do activism because I think it's a privilege to do climate activism because not everyone can do it.
Mm-hmm. Um, in your group, Fridays for Future in Hamburg, do you go there to meet?
Yeah, I go to that group sometimes, and I also do it in my city here, which is like near Hamburg. That's what I mainly do, and I organize on the national level quite a bit.
What percentage of the organizers are female?
Oh, quite many, I guess. Um, we're definitely carried by females, so percentage, I'd say 60 to 70.
That's a lot. And
Yeah.
why do you think that is? Where are the boys?
Maybe it has something to do with empathy, but I actually don't know it.
You know what someone suggested to me, Hannah, in Georgia, is that in high school at least, it's not cool for boys to be activists. I guess what's cool for boys is to be an athlete or to be a musician and be in a band. And somehow there's a cool factor, which I don't really understand because I can't think of anything cooler than being an activist, but I'm not a teenager. What do you think about that explanation, the cool factor?
Yeah, it might be. Um, I didn't really know that activism was cool. I mean, when I was in high school, activism wasn't cool at all. Like, um, but I think it might be true. I think girls are more likely to do something that's not really cool. So I think the social pressure is not really there to like be cool.
Why? Because you have to like prove you're a man in a way you don't have to prove that you're a woman.
Yeah, I think so. I actually don't know what it's about. Um, I don't know.
In high school, what what were the cool guys like? Were they athletes? Were they musicians? What were they? What were the cool guys characterized by?
Here they were mostly playing soccer and drinking every weekend.
Hmm. Hmm. What about
That's
smoking cigarettes?
yeah, that also, but yeah.
Interesting. I talked to a woman in Turkey, and she was in her 20s, and she said it was much more equal in terms of male female. So I'm thinking that maybe by the time you're in your 20s, the cool factor isn't as influential for guys.
Yeah, I think so. Also, many of the guys that are in climate activism, they're older.
Hmm.
Um,
In their
so that
20s?
might be true.
That's
Most
interesting.
of them.
In their 20s.
Yeah, not all of them though.
Okay.
So on the national level, I think it's actually quite equal of females and males. Maybe a bit more female, but you don't really see the difference. But it's different. Like in my local group, we're 10 people, and I think there's only 3 boys. And yeah,
Hmm. Do you think of yourself as a feminist?
yeah, I do.
And how do you
I think
define?
that like, mm, that there's equality between men and women, and I think it's also like about empowerment. Um, I think being a feminist is just not really, it's not radical, it's just something normal. But yeah.
Uh, Maybe a couple decades ago, young women used to say, "I'm not a feminist, but I believe in equality. I'm not a feminist, but," because it was kind of, feminism meant you didn't like men. But I think that's changed. Do you?
Yeah, I think so.
Right. Um, in terms of organizing, a lot of times in activist groups, there's an emphasis on horizontal organizing, not having strict hierarchies. What kind of principles do you do to get things done?
Mm, I think there are hierarchies, definitely. We try not to have them, but that's just not true. Like, we also don't really say it that we have it, but I think it's just something normal that kind of builds up because there are some people that are taking responsibility, and especially when you have like such a big movement, like in Germany, we're like we're like huge here in Germany, and it's so professional. I think we have um, hundreds of people organizing on the national level, and we have lots of experts in every field, and they're just the people that are doing the most work. They're carrying the most information, and when there's information that only people can have that are trusted, which does happen quite often, I think that just builds naturally. But we try to have it as transparent as possible and to let everyone work.
Do you, how do you, like in a meeting, do you have an agenda? Do you rotate who facilitates the meeting? How do you organize the kind of nuts and bolts of task groups, meetings, getting things done?
Yes, we always have an agenda like a couple of days before, and then everyone can write their points. And there's always someone different that facilitates and does the notes. So um, I think that's not a problem. We just do it with an agenda.
In my experience organizing, one problem is people say that they'll do things and they don't, or they burn out. And another problem is some people like to talk a lot, and they want to be heard and talk, talk, talk. So their goal isn't so much to get things done, but it's to be heard. So I wonder if you have those issues, and if so, how you cope.
Yeah, there are definitely these issues that people say they're going to get stuff done and then they don't. But I think that's actually a problem that there also has to be someone that's responsible. Like that's just how it is, and there is always someone that has to watch out that stuff actually gets done. And burnouts are actually um, quite frequent phenomenon here in the German movement, at least, because sometimes it just gets insane because we have, especially in the time before the global strikes or big demonstrations, because we have um, WhatsApp chats and Telegram chats, and you have thousands of messages every day.
Oh, wow.
It's just you carry your phone around with you all the time, so that's really stressful because you always have to look at it. There are people calling every day, and sometimes before the global strikes, it just gets a bit crazy. Yeah.
Um, do people have titles like, I'm the chairperson of this task group, or how do you know, like, oh, if you want to get something done, you need to talk to so and so?
Yes. in the German movement, every local group has a delegate, or like 2 or 3 delegates at least. So in my local group, I'm a delegate, and then we have the national level, and there we have working groups, and we have a communication task force that just watches out that stuff gets done with surveys and the weekly calls that we have every Sunday. And we have like 10 to 15 working groups, and then there's always 2 to 4 people that are responsible for the working group. For example, I'm responsible for the press working group here in Germany, so I coordinate lots of stuff for that. Like, to take care that a press release is sent out and things like that.
Mm-hmm. It seems like images are sometimes more powerful than words. So do you incorporate images in your outreach to the press and to the public?
Yes, definitely. We work a lot with social media. We have really professional people that are doing social media graphics for explanation and all of that. So that's really good. So our social media accounts for FF Germany, they're pretty big. They all have hundreds of thousands of followers.
And what do you find works in terms of getting people's attention with images or words? What kind of strategies make people say, "Oh, I'm going to pay attention to this"?
Well, either something that's emotionalizing, or just something that has extreme facts. Just something that makes people feel something, either really happy or really scared or angry, something like that.
That's interesting. What kind of issues, or what's your next big event that you're planning for? What's on the table now in the German group?
Oh, yeah. There's now a coal mine that's going to be built in Australia. And a German company, Siemens, wants to support it, and they want to invest in it. So we're doing a campaign on that right now, and we're having big strikes on Friday, and we're doing lots of tweeting and lots of social media with hashtag Stop Adani, which is the Australian movement's hashtag as well. So they've been fighting against it for over a decade, because that's just ridiculous. Like, that's gonna be the biggest coal mine there's ever been, and Australia's emissions are gonna double, and they're gonna ship it over the Great Barrier Reef.
Oh my gosh.
Is just, I don't get it at all. It doesn't make sense to me. So we're fighting against that right now.
The bushfires are got to be helping.
Yeah, the bushfires also. But the Australian government doesn't really do anything about it. They're not planning to do that. I also read an article where they said that no one could have predicted the bushfires.
But they were predicted.
Yeah.
Yeah, they had projections based on climate change that this was going to happen. Yeah. So
yeah, and we're doing the campaign to stop Germany from building another coal plant. So that's the next big thing that's happening for Germany in specific.
Mm-hmm. How do you coordinate with other Fridays for Future groups, like in Sweden or other countries? How do you connect?
We have lots of Telegram chats for international groups. We're just trying to stay in touch over that way. And there's not really that much that has to be coordinated. It's only social media. So there are social media working groups, international, that everyone can join, and it's the date finding for the global strikes, but the global strikes are mostly just in connection with other big events like the UN Climate Summit or COP. So that's not really a big problem. So we also stay in touch because we have meetings sometimes. Um, so I've been to the last European meeting
Was it in
in
Zurich?
Lausanne. Hmm?
In Zurich?
It was in Lausanne.
Lausanne.
Yeah.
And
Um,
what was that like? And did people speak English to talk to each other
yeah.
internationally?
Yeah, we only spoke English. Like, I also speak French, so in Lausanne you speak French. So I spoke French with some people, but mostly just English, because that's what everyone can speak. And it was really interesting to see how the movements work, because some movements are really big, like Germany and Italy, and some movements are so small that they barely have like they only have 300 pounds, for example, of money. So there is like such a huge difference between German movement and the other movements. But I think regarding people, I think it wasn't really a difference because we were all just like doing the same stuff, just striking every Friday.
Mm-hmm. Um, what's amazing to me is how much backlash there is to climate change activists and the really harsh, mean, brutal. Oh, these kids are just being manipulated by leftist adults or something. I wonder if you get that kind of backlash and how you cope with it.
I think I cope with it quite well. So it's I'm really glad that it's not a big problem for me. Like there are people telling me to stop and that it doesn't make sense, and there are politicians that are saying that we should rather go to
Oh
school
yeah.
and that professionals do it. And of course, like there's hate on social media, but I don't really take it that serious.
Hmm.
Yeah, so it's not a problem for me.
And are your parents supportive or neutral, or how do they feel about your spending all this time and energy?
Mm, they're really supportive. At first, like, I support what I'm doing, and I think it's great. And they also sometimes come with me to the strikes.
Ooh,
Um, yeah, my father took some of his lunch breaks to come to the strikes.
nice.
And yeah, but I have to travel so much for climate activism, and they really like that. But the rest is fine. They're quite supportive.
Mm-hmm. People are talking about that Greta's kind of made it like used to be slut shaming and now it's airplane flight shaming. You know, you feel guilty if you fly. How do you feel about that?
Mm, I think it was obvious that it was gonna be that way because when you talk about a topic that much, it's obvious that the individual will get blamed. Um, I don't think it's gonna help us solve the problem. Um, Maybe some parts of it, for example, awareness in the society, but it's not gonna help us overcome the climate crisis. That's too big for that. Um, so I think we need political change for that. So flight shaming is not enough, but I don't think it's a bad thing, but we shouldn't focus on it.
Okay. When you think about the future, are you optimistic or pessimistic? It's kind of hard to be optimistic right now with all the deniers in power.
Mm, it really depends on the day for me. Um, Sometimes I'm really pessimistic about it, and I think we can't do anything anyways. But sometimes I'm optimistic because, well, I wouldn't say I'm really optimistic about it, more like realistic. So I know what's possible, so and what's not possible. So, but I try not to be pessimistic because that doesn't help me. And there are always some friends that are just saying that it doesn't help if you're not happy because it does make the climate better. So that's true.
um, people talk about like some kind of futuristic engineering solutions to suck carbon out of the atmosphere. Do you read about that stuff and have any sense that that might work?
I do read about that stuff, but it's crazy. We can't rely on something that's not there yet. That's just not that's not how it should work. And we know the solutions right now. The solution right now is not to wait for something to happen. It's just to not rely on fossil fuels anymore. And that's not what's happening, unfortunately. So I think technologies are going to be great for energy efficiency also. So I think that is going to help. But it's not everything that we should rely on right now.
What always strikes me is that for every global problem, we have solutions. Poverty, educating kids, the climate, there's solutions, but there is not the political will. So it really is, it boils down to political change that has to happen. Do you agree with that?
Yeah. Mm.
Yeah, and I'm thinking about, I certainly hope Trump doesn't get reelected. I just read that they have a new policy that they're trying to get where government agencies, when they do environmental impact reports, won't have to include climate change. So you can pretend climate change won't exist.
That's crazy.
I
Okay,
know.
well,
It's totally crazy.
stuff like that happens because we're gonna be in the parliament of our state talking about the new climate law, and there are many people that can actually talk. And the ones that are right before us is a group of climate deniers from European Institute for Climate and Environment. I think that's what it's called. And right after us is Volkswagen, German cars.
And what will they argue?
I don't know. We'll see.
And the climate change deniers, they're going to say, "Oh, this is a natural process. There's cycles. Humans didn't have anything to do with it."
Yeah, the climate has always changed. Something like that. What you always hear.
Yeah, but I think what an influential video was Al Gore's video. What was it called? And something truth. Do you know that one? I've forgotten. But anyway, he
I
shows
think so.
that this is history of climate change, and then all of a
Yeah.
sudden there's the big upward. So it isn't a natural process.
No, it's not. I also talked to a scientist who did a simulation on how the Earth would look like if there wouldn't have been any humans at all. So you can definitely see that it's humans that are creating climate change.
Yeah. What would the new law? It just for the state for Hamburg, right? What would the new law
Well, it's
say?
not for Hamburg, it's for another state. It's kind of complicated.
Okay.
Yeah.
And what would it say? The new law.
Just net zero to 2050, and yeah, bit too late. And just something that's really open that you can really that doesn't something that doesn't make it like
Any
an obligation
specifics?
to do yeah, it's not specific.
Got it. It's like we have this nice little plan goal, but we
Yeah,
don't talk about how to achieve the goal.
like it would be nice to do that, but you don't have to. So
Okay. So personally, it sounds like you don't eat a lot of meat. You recycle. What else can you personally do? What do you do for protecting the environment?
I don't fly anymore. Um, at least I don't have to fly right now. If I really would have to fly, I maybe would, but that's not the case right now. Um, I try to eat vegan as much as possible, but I do it most of the days, but it doesn't work always. And um, yeah, I try not to buy that many new clothes. Like, I'm not really buying new clothes at all. And just to always think about everything, what I buy or what I do, if it like about the environmental impact of everything that I do.
Mm-hmm. It's interesting. People don't seem to know this. People know that cattle add a lot of pollution and carbon dioxide, but they don't know that I think fashion industry is almost as much. It's,
Yeah,
so clothes really are significant.
mm, it is.
Yeah. So 5 years from now, you'll be graduated from university and maybe working for an NGO, still being an activist. Any other ideas what you'll be doing 5 years from now?
Well, my passion is actually music, so I play the violin and the piano as well. So I'm planning to still do that. That's actually the sad thing about activism because I think what people don't see is how much we actually give up for it. Um, Before I started activism, I was playing for like hours every day, and I just don't have the time for it anymore. Um, yeah.
Hmm. Interesting. Anything else that you think should be included that we haven't talked about in terms of how to be an effective activist?
No, I don't think so.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you. Thank you.